With the recent medical update in Star Citizen and especially the introduction of MedGel, I think a lot of people have misunderstood the role of the RSI Apollo and really medical ships in general. So in today's video we are going to set the record straight, what these ships are actually meant for, how they fit into the wider medical gameplay loop, and why they'll still be essential despite the arrival of the oh-so-controversial MedGel. Before we do that, guys, a quick favor, I would kindly ask you to subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the content. I've noticed recently that only 37% of viewers are subscribed, so it would really help a lot with the algorithm. Thank you so much. Also, we got a giveaway this month for Patreon and YouTube members, as well as people who subscribe and comment to any videos posted this month. Thanks to Admiral Griffiths, we are giving away an L21 Wolf. More information in the pinned comment. Alright, so, until recently, the way most players looked at medical ships here in Star Citizen was actually very simple. They were mobile respawn points. Whether it was a Cutlass Red parked outside of a bunker mission or a C8R Pisces waiting near a derelict settlement, the appeal was obvious. You could dive into the fight, get killed, and instead of waking up in a faraway city or orbital station, you just respawn right there, close to the action, ready to jump back in. For PvP and bunker runners alike, myself included, the ability to shorten downtime was often considered the main purpose of medical ships. We've also seen how these ships became essential tools during high-intensity PvP events. Players would stage medical ships at popular hotspots, especially in lawless areas or near conflict zones where battle could rage for hours. The idea was to create an endless loop of reinforcements. If you went down, your medical ships made sure that you weren't out of the fight for long. For many players, this is what gave medical ships their value, not the healing gameplay, but the ability to respawn close to the action. And then there's the way medical gameplay has been integrated into larger ships. Capital class vessels like the Idris or the Polaris are fitted with medical bays, which players have been using as forward operating bases. These bays don't just provide healing or a way to replenish your thirst and hunger gauges, but they also serve as respawn points for the crew. Imagine being in a fleet battle and losing your fighter, and instead of waking up 100 million kilometers away, you respawn inside your capital ship. From there, you grab a spare fighter from the hangar and jump straight back into the fray. The mechanic has made medical bays a cornerstone of fleet warfare, tying survival directly to logistics and planning. So up until now, the role of medical ships, whether small like the Cutlass Red or nimble like the C8R Pisces, or integrated into larger carriers, has revolved heavily around the concept of respawn convenience. Healing and triage has always been present, of course, but they've often taken a backseat to what players really valued: the ability to stay close to the fight, reduce downtime, and keep the action going. That's all about to dramatically change in Star Citizen Alpha 4.3.1. With this update, medical beds will no longer function freely. Instead, they are going to require MedGel, a consumable resource that fuels every aspect of their operation. No MedGel means no healing, no respawning, and no quick saves on the battlefield. Every time a medical bed is used, whether to stabilize a patient, treat an injury, or provide a full respawn, it will consume a portion of MedGel, and after a certain number of uses, those beds are going to run dry. This creates an entirely new layer of logistics. Medical ships and capital vessels can no longer act as infinite respawn stations. They will now need regular resupply runs to stay operational, and that's not a trivial matter here because MedGel cartridges come with a staggering price. One unit costs 100,000 USD. It's a massive expense, especially for players who were used to treating medical beds as a free and unlimited convenience. What this means is that medical gameplay is shifting from being a simple set-and-forget safety net to something that requires planning, investment, and resource management. Suddenly, the decision to bring a Cutlass Red or C8R Pisces to a fight is not just about convenience, it's about whether you can afford to keep that ship stocked with MedGel and how much use you're going to get out of it before the cartridge runs out. But the biggest drawback, without a doubt, is the cost. CIG explained that each MedGel cartridge is going to be priced as 100,000 USD, as we said, and this is only going to cover 2 respawns. That translates to an eye-watering 500,000 Alpha UEC per respawn, and to put this into perspective, many entry-level missions in the verse don't even pay that much. Which means that the cost of dying and coming back through a medical bed will often exceed the entire reward of the mission itself. And even if you look at higher tier contracts where payouts are more substantial, the economics don't work out any better. When those missions are shared between several players, the split reward quickly falls way below the price of using a single respawn. In other words, unless you are on a reputation progression track and you're deliberately grinding standings or you're heavily into looting and making your money elsewhere, relying on medical ships as a mobile respawn point is simply going to be financially unviable. And that is a fundamental shift. The old meta of dropping a Cutlass Red or C8R Pisces at a hotspot and using it as a free respawn taxi is gone. From now on, every respawn is going to carry a very real price tag, and that alone changes how players will approach risk, combat, and even which mission they are going to accept. So, what will medical ships and medical beds be used for in this new context? Well, I think that they still hold some real value, but in a much more selective way. For example, in very high tier missions with payouts in the 100 to 150,000 Alpha UEC range, using a respawn once, maybe twice, can still be financially viable. It will come with a significant penalty, of course, but the mission payout can absorb that hit. In those situations, the ships mentioned earlier, or eventually an Apollo, could still make sense as a safety net. But moving forward, the real utility of medical ships will shift toward large multi-crew fleets and organized operations. Think of scenarios like the Hathor sandbox events. These are not simple cave exploration missions or routine bunker runs. These are large-scale, player-driven operations with their own objectives, strategies, and long-term goals. The players who take part in them are not primarily motivated by money. They're motivated by the challenge, the coordination, and the sense of accomplishment. In these contexts, the financial penalty of burning through MedGel carriages becomes secondary. The priority is to keep the fleet operational, minimize downtime, and ensure that participants can stay engaged in the action rather than constantly flying back from distant hospitals. A medical ship integrated into such an operation becomes less of a respawn taxi and more of a logistical backbone, part of the same infrastructure as fuel haulers, repair ships, and supply runs. It turns into a support vessel that enables a fleet as a whole to keep pressing forward rather than a standalone convenience tool. Another situation where medical ships and beds will continue to make sense is in remote or underdeveloped systems. Think about Paro right now, or Nyx in the future. These systems are going to have far fewer space stations, and in some cases, entire regions might lack any medical facilities at all. In those environments, the presence of a medical ship could make the difference between staying in the field and having to quantum back to Stanton for every death. Out there, the ability to respawn or receive advanced treatments directly from a ship won't just be a convenience, it will be a necessity. Without it, player risks losing hours of travel time just to rejoin their friends. So while MedGel makes respawn costly, the strategic value of medical ships in these frontier systems will increase. They'll provide the only respawn solution available, especially in org operations that deliberately set up shop away from civilization. So while the days of cheap, unlimited respawns are behind us, medical ships will still carve out a niche. They will simply less belong to the lone wolf or the casual bunker runner and more to the organized groups, the large-scale org battles, and the sandbox events where money is not the main driver, but rather teamwork and persistence. In the end, I think the community has been looking at medical ships the wrong way. For years, we got used to treating them as free respawn taxis, a way to stay glued to the action without worrying about distance or downtime, but with Alpha 4.3.1 and the introduction of MedGel, that era is over. From now on, medical gameplay won't be about cheap convenience, it's going to be about logistics, planning, and making smart choices. Yes, the cost is high. Yes, using a medical bed to respawn will often wipe out the profit from a mission, but that doesn't mean that these ships are going to be useless. Far from it. Their role is simply shifting. They are still going to matter for top-tier contracts where the risk is worth the reward, for massive fleet operations where money isn't the main goal, and for expeditions into remote systems where stations are few and far between. In those contexts, medical ships can still make the difference between staying in the fight or being locked out entirely. Medical ships are evolving into what they were always meant to be. Not shortcuts, but critical support platforms. And whether we like it or not, that change in direction is heading us towards the final vision of death mechanics for the game, in which every action we take, even reckless ones that lead to death of our characters, have consequences that must be weighed in. And so that is all for today's video. If you enjoyed the content of the channel, as always, please help the channel with just a little like and a subscribe. It really helps a lot with the algorithm. Also, as always, if you want to support the channel a little bit more, any help on Patreon is much appreciated. You want to get Star Citizen for yourself, you also have the referral code down there. Thank you so much for watching, guys. As always, a big shout out to my Patreon and YouTube members, including Dr. Robinson Carter, This is the key to the Crusher, the Ryzen Zero Crusher. I have been Iran, and I'll see you guys in the next one.